Heat Seekers, are you ready to piss off your league by picking up the best players on waivers?
Yeah, buddy.
That's good because we've got Evan Engram up as our first tight end of the waivers.
This guy's getting consistently targeted. Absolutely a must add as a tight end. Probably one of the most consistent tight ends this year. Rick, is there any other thoughts on Evan Engram?
Yeah, we've talked about it the last couple of weeks, right? He continues to be on here. Last week he had 10 targets. This week he had 6 more, and he's catching a lot of them, right? He's had drop issues, especially last year when he had kind of a down year. Him and Lawrence are continuing to develop a chemistry that I think is very good at the tight end spot. So I still like Evan Engram and think he should be rostered everywhere.
Yep. Another tight end we need to add is a guy who's back healthy. That's Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers. He was hurt off and on throughout the early part of the season, and you could tell he just wasn't playing 100%. Last couple of weeks he has, and Aaron Rodgers is targeting him a ton. He got targeted 12 times this week, got 10 of them. Rick, what do you think about Tonyan?
I think Rodgers trusts him, and with Cobb getting injured, and we don't know how he's going to do, that's just another guy that Rodgers trusts that's going to be out of the lineup. So it's Tonyan, it's Lazard, and it's Dobbs right now, and they're not playing very well, so they're needing to throw. I just think Tanyan's going to get a ton of targets, and we already know how good he can be in the red zone with Rodgers from what he did 2 years ago when he was healthy. So I think he's the priority add at tight end right now, and I think that continues as long as he's healthy.
Yep, huge. All right, so next up is the backup to Leonard Fournette. Rachaad White from the Buccaneers. He's getting opportunities. What do you think about him, and do you think he's got value if Leonard Fournette's on the field, or does he need to be injured if you're really going to see Rachaad White be used?
This is one of those ads where if I have a dead space, like if I'm carrying 2 defenses or 2 quarterbacks, and maybe I have Derek Carr and he just got done with his bye, and now I have that extra quarterback spot, I'd pick up White and just not hope that Leonard Fournette has an injury. But if Leonard Fournette does have an injury, this is a guy that's going to get all the rushing work and all the passing work. There's not a lot of backup running backs that can get that for you. And we know how much Tom Brady targets the running back. I just feel like he doesn't have to be rostered, but if you do have one of those really underutilized spots on your roster, then I would rather have a backup like this that could be thrust into high-end RB2 numbers if the starter goes down. I feel like he's just worth having on there if you do have that roster spot.
And to add to what you're saying, his snap percentages have increased. We obviously don't have this week's numbers in, but he was averaging close to 40% snaps the last 2 previous games. So he's definitely one that you want to keep on your roster if possible, or target if you have that open spot. Another guy that we've been telling you to target, Alec Pierce from the Colts. Now, obviously, some of y'all have been listening because his numbers have shot up some. But this guy's still getting a ton of targets. Obviously, this week really helped because he didn't catch all of his targets, but he caught a touchdown, which was a huge benefit for him. Rick, what do you think about Pierce in this Colts offense?
Yeah, the Colts can't stop anybody on defense, so they got to throw, right? 58 times. 42 completions for Matt Ryan today. 7 more targets for Pierce. It was a late touchdown that kind of saved his fantasy day. But if he continues to get that type of work, continues to build more trust with Matt Ryan, and if Matt Ryan continues to play better like he did today, I mean, going into the day, Matt Ryan was on pace to break the fumble record and was leading the National Football League in interceptions. So obviously he needs to play a little bit better, which he did today. And Alec Pierce could be a big part of that offense going forward.
Absolutely. And he's been getting targeted. So this is definitely exciting news for guys that need some wide receiver help. Speaking of needing wide receiver help, the Giants, although they are 5-1, needed wide receiver help, and they got it. Wan'Dale Robinson came back from injury, performed fine. Targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them for 37 yards, added a tutty in there. Definitely with this wide receiver core, suspect at best with all the injuries, this is a guy to target. Rick, what do you think about Wan'Dale Robinson, and how are you feeling about moving forward?
He is going to be the wide receiver 1 on this team if he's healthy. I don't know if we ever see Kadarius Toney play for the Giants again. He's got that Cam Akers thing that's going on, and so they don't seem to like him. A new staff that didn't draft him, so Toney might be on the move in the next 2 weeks. Kenny Galladay might be on the move in the next 2 weeks if they can get anybody to eat some of that contract. So Wan'Dale Robinson with Sterling Shepard out is going to be their probably highest targeted wide receiver if he can stay healthy on the field, and I trust in Brian Dable. Look what he's done with this Giants team. 1 loss now on the season. Saquon back and Daniel Jones looking better than he has looked the past couple of years. I just trust in Dable, and I think Wan'Dale Robinson is going to get the most targets for this team the rest of the year.
Yep. will be huge. Another wide receiver we've been telling you to target, obviously so far hasn't done great against Philly. When we're recording this, he's been targeted 4 times, only caught one of those for 9 yards, but he's getting consistently targeted. Dak will be back soon, so this offense hopefully will have him improved quarterback play. What do you think about Michael Gallup, and what are we doing with him?
Same thing we've said the past couple weeks with him on this list, right? It's just we're biding time waiting for Dak to get back, and then Dak can support CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and that's just what we're doing. We knew the numbers weren't going to be probably real great with Cooper Rush, but with Dak coming back, even in the second half of this game being down 20-0, he might get a ton of targets because they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more than they've had to so far up to this point. I'd still like Michael Gallup, and he's just getting healthier every week, and then we get Dak back soon. It's all good for Gallup going forward.
All right, we got a quarterback for you. This guy has been producing very well as a fantasy quarterback this year for the Falcons. Marcus Mariota, look at that roster ownership. It's extremely low. This guy really should be on your roster and really should be getting some consideration for a starter for you. Rick, what do you think about Marcus Mariota?
He had the one bad week with under 5 fantasy points, but all the rest of them have been over 15 fantasy points, and I think half of them over 18. He's been consistent, just that one bad game. People don't like it, right? It's Marcus Mariota, the guy that was drafted number 2 and struggled and moved teams and then was a backup. It's kind of like Geno Smith. So people don't like it. It's not sexy, but he's got rushing upside, right? And we like that with a quarterback because it gives us a solid floor, puts him ahead a little bit. And he's been a decent passer. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad. Today he was great, 13 for 14, and didn't have a ton of yards, but was very efficient on his day. I just think that Marcus Mariota right now, especially with bye weeks, is going to be a startable quarterback until bye weeks are over. And we know those go till week 14. So there you go.
Absolutely. All right. Another guy that I think has been way too under the radar, Chase Claypool from the Steelers. Outside of one game, he's been targeted at least 6 times every game this year. The last 2 weeks, he's been targeted 7 or more. Obviously, he got the touchdown this week to really help boost his production. This is a guy that you need to have in consideration. I know we've talked about Pickens and they have Deontay Johnson and Freiermuth. Freiermuth was out this week, so there's a little bit of bump there just because the tight end wasn't there. But this is a guy that has been good. He was a top 100 fantasy option coming into the season, but those roster ownership numbers are pretty low. Rick, what do you make about Claypool?
The work's been there. It's just, we've even seen it with Deontay Johnson not being as productive as he's been in the past. 2 new quarterbacks, right? They've already had to switch quarterbacks, then go back because Pickett had the concussion. So these guys are still building rapport. We've seen it with other wide receivers switching teams, getting off to a slow start, quarterbacks in new systems, getting off to a slow start. All that stuff is real. And now we're getting 4, 5, 6 weeks into the season. You start to see those connections developing a little bit better. And I think we saw that even Pickett before he went out and then with Trubisky. So I think no matter who starts, we're going to see Claypool continue to improve on that efficiency. And we saw Pickens kind of have a bump there with Pickett when he came in, but those are the 2 guys that literally work together all off season. And then you see that stuff grow with the other wide receivers and quarterbacks, and Claypool being available in half of the leagues after being a top 100 player. You have a chance to get a top 100 player for the rest of the season off your waiver wire.
Absolutely. Rookie who might finally start in week 7, Jameson Williams from the Lions. We're telling you to go grab him now. Now, obviously, we've seen some other rookie receivers, Olave and some of these guys really produce well. Rick, what gives you hope that Jameson's going to be a guy that could produce well moving forward when he gets back?
Volume. Look at Josh Reynolds when Amon-Ra was out and DJ Shark was out. Jameson is at least the second best wide receiver, probably. Now, it's going to take him a little bit of time to get up to speed. So you want to grab him and be willing to hold him for a couple weeks, right? Let him get his legs under him a little bit. And since he's been hurt and hasn't played yet, no camp, none of that stuff, it's going to take a couple weeks probably. But he is at least, at minimum, the second most talented receiver for the Lions. Outside of Amon-Ra, he could be the guy that gets the second most targets, if not the first. He may be better than Amon-Ra, was probably a better prospect, right? We know the Lions are going to have to throw the ball a lot. Like, they're not defensive stalwarts or anything. So even if they are in games, they're going to have to score a lot of points like we've seen in the Seattle game. They're going to get Swift back. That's going to help.
I hope so. All right, running back, Kenyan Drake from the Baltimore Ravens. This is a guy that we've talked about over the years because he's been fantasy productive many times. His ownership is low, but he looks like the most healthy, most explosive running back in Baltimore. This could be a huge get if you need some running back help. Rick, how do you feel about Drake? And what do you think about this whole Dobbins, Drake, Mike Davis, all these other guys? What's your take on all this?
Right now, Dobbins had tightness in his knee today, and that could be a lot of different things, right? We could see him back next week. He could just be day-to-day. He he could end up missing multiple weeks to protect him, right? And just let him get healthy. And Kenyan Drake is the guy there if he is out and he misses time. And we want a healthy running back in this Baltimore offense. We've always wanted that. They're typically very efficient, not 10 yards per tote efficient like Drake has been over the past 2 weeks. But if Dobbins is going to miss time, this could be a huge part of your fantasy roster. Being able to pick up a guy like Kenyan Drake and get RB2, high-end RB2 numbers out of him over a few weeks, I think that he is probably the most coveted waiver for me this week, just because a couple of the other guys are going to be available in only like 40% of leagues, and Drake is going to be available in almost all leagues.
Of them. Absolutely. All right. Now we want to bring up a guy that we brought up last week. Somebody's not listening. Under 70% on most platforms. You got to go get Brian Robinson from the Commanders. Just getting a ton of touches. Now, obviously, wasn't hugely productive. That touchdown really saved his fantasy day last week because he only had 60 yards on the ground. But this is a guy that's healthy and looks really good, and they're going to continue to use him as their RB1. How do you feel about Robinson moving forward? Is this the biggest priority add of all of our guys?
I do think that if Brian Robinson is available, then he is the top priority. But we see he's only available in 50% of ESPN, and I would be curious to see if that number's a little bit higher with him playing on Thursday, and depending on how league waivers work, and some are different. But yeah, we got to remember this kid was like 46 days from being shot twice in the leg when he played Thursday night. It was like 42 or 46 days. And he's still getting his legs under him, right? And I think that he is going to be damn good. On some runs, he didn't look like he had a bunch of bursts. And then on other ones, he looked like he had a ton of bursts. So I think that he is the top priority. And then Drake would be my second when it comes to running backs on this list.
And if you need help, hit us up. rotoheat.com/discord. Like, subscribe. See you next week.